Moving on, however, Giants, New York Giants. They've had an interesting start to the year. When I say interesting start, we're going to the week 13 of the NFL season. 7-4. They've lost their last two games. And I guess sort of the main talking point here is this is a huge game for the Giants and the Commanders this Sunday. They really are struggling, Mark, to offer more than Saquon Barkley as an option on this offense. Obviously, you've got notable injuries. You're losing Daniel Bellinger. It's really disrupted the chemistry in this offense. The thing for me with the Giants was, and I said this a few weeks ago, they were blitz heavy on the defense with Wink Martindale, and it worked for the first few weeks of the season. And what Brian Daboll has been able to do with his team, with the limited resources available to him, and with Daniel Jones, who has improved, but he's not like the next level quarterback that you need. What the Giants have been able to do in that window is remarkable. But, they're going up against the Commanders team on Sunday who have been superb at defending the run against teams with good run games. So even if Barkley does try to have a game, the Commanders have experience of stopping them. And frankly, this is going to be a very interesting or good test for the Giants this weekend. And I'm intrigued to sort of have your thoughts around this Giants team and what you think of this game going into the weekend.
Oh, I think it's really important. I do not have who I picked in front of me, whether it's the Giants or Commanders, and that's such a coin flip as well because it can go either way. Like the Commanders are super hot, and you have to give credit to the defense, and that's what I think is going to be the problem with the Giants this week because. Like I was begging, and I mean, all I wanted to see in the NFL was someone absolutely hone in on defending against Saquon Barkley. In week 11, that's what the Lions did. And people don't give the Lions run defense any credit because it's like it was ranked 31st in the NFL going into that game. It was ranked 32nd in the NFL going into the Green Bay Packers game, and everyone thought that Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon were going to run all over them. And it's like it hasn't happened. When the Lions have one assignment and is to focus on a rusher, they're able to defend against them. And in that game, I think it was 15 carries, 22 yards, 1.5 yards per rush by Saquon Barkley. And you're thinking, oh, well, here we go. This is the formula that we all wanted to be put out there for other teams to try and do. And then we saw the same happen last week against the Cowboys. They followed up on Thursday night on Thanksgiving to do the same thing against Saquon Barkley. I had the numbers here in front of me. He had 11 carries for 39 yards. Brightwell and Breida combined for another 37 on 7 carries. So it's that, when you're able to defend against Saquon Barkley and you're forcing Daniel Jones into, explosive plays when he doesn't have that wide receiver core. It's what was, glaring going into the London game. And that was week 4 or 5, that's all we kind of wanted to see. And it's like, whatever the defense does, it's going to be on. It's like what is happening with the Jets. It's like the defense can do whatever, but if the offense can't get going, it can't get going. So it's like, I saw a stat there that in the 4 losses that the Giants have had, they haven't rushed over 90 yards. So I know that is part of the thing, that if you're ahead, you're going to be rushing the ball more and all that. But at the same time, they've rushed 21 times, 26 times, 28 times against Dallas, Detroit, and Seattle when they've lost. And it's like they just haven't been able to get it going. So I think when that would have been their strength going into the playoffs, obviously would have been the rushing game. They don't have that anymore, and it's not something that you can scheme out of. Now, I was interested watching the other day what would happen. I guess they're playing more pony personnel, if you're not familiar with it. It's like, it's not just straightforward 2 running backs, in the backfield. It's 2 running backs on the field, and it's kind of, trying to find a way to get your best players open. So, like they don't have a ton of talent. So if they can line up Saquon Barkley somewhere different, and you think that you're defending the run game in Matt Breida, and then that opens up Saquon Barkley. They are obviously trying, but I think the problem with that is, and everyone was talking about it, that Saquon Barkley was getting overused through the first few weeks of the season, and that he was going to get tired and worn out. And I hate to lean into that narrative, but maybe it is that it's like, the legs aren't turning as fast as they need it to be. And when everything relies on him, and it's like, it just shuts down Daniel Jones running as well. And to be honest, I'm glad to see it, because I'd love to see if the Giants can get out of it. Then they're deserving of their playoff spot and deserving of their record. But until they're able to overcome that against, they have some tough teams that they're going to have to play against. Obviously, against Washington, the Eagles twice. I don't think the Giants fans are as confident now as they were 2 weeks ago.
Michaela, Mark makes a great point there about sort of deserving to be in the playoffs. I think, as I've said about what Daboll's done is superb. I love the way that Saquon Barkley has been able in the first few weeks of the season to shut people up and come back. He's had a really, really rough few years, but Do you agree with that narrative where he might be like the Energizer Bunny and he might be starting to run out of fuel just with the batteries, and maybe he needs a few weeks off? Or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, you have to remember that Barkley has gone through a good few injuries the last few years. I think personally for me, it got to the point where I'm kind of like, is his body just giving up on him? Like maybe he won't be that elite player we saw like his rookie season, but he's started the year like tremendously, and I'm so happy for him because he's like a lovely guy. Like when you follow him on social media, like he's a great role model. But yeah, I do agree with Mark that they are overusing him. And especially, like I said, he's been injured so much that like they need to kind of hit the brakes a little bit and kind of like give him a bit of like a breather. Like obviously still use him in the games, but not so reliant on him. Like you have to remember, I think like do people forget that the Giants give Kenny Golladay a $72 million contract, and he has 50 yards for the season. 50 yards.
That's
He's
atrocious.
he's robbing a living. Like I think he's good, but they're just not utilizing him. Like and like obviously the Giants didn't pick up Daniel Jones 5th-year option. So like it's kind of hard to say. Like if the Giants kind of go into the playoffs, are they going to stick with Daniel Jones and stuff like that? But then again, if they do stick with him, I'm kind of like, yeah, Barkley's playing well, but then you also have the $72 million receiver who has 50 yards in like week 13. Like you're gonna have to get a quarterback who can do both, like who can has good like like a good connection with the running back, but also with the receivers. Yeah, I think to me the Giants have felt like they've slowed down. They started off red hot, and they're just kind of like stuttering now a little bit. But yeah, I think I don't think Daniel Jones is the answer. I think he can't obviously can't throw the ball that well. I guess like sometimes he's good, and then sometimes he's just like ugh. Like, and who can ever forget him tripping that time when he had like a for sure touchdown? He tripped over himself. Yeah, but they're definitely using Barkley too much. They need to kind of cut back and see if they have even a little spark with Jones and some of his receivers. But if I think they're gonna kind of stutter towards the end. They'll limp into the playoffs if they make the playoffs. I think the Commanders are probably going to beat them this week.
I have the Commanders winning as well, and Mark has the Commanders winning as well. More picks at the end of a broadcast. Yeah, I feel like we can go into like a deep dive in Daniel Jones. I think the Giants fan base have been deserving of the season that they've got so far. They've been through an awful lot to get to this point. So hopefully for them, they get a few weeks of happiness. But yeah, I don't want to start talking about Daniel Jones because I'll be here all day if I do.